This was not how I had envisioned my golden years. Slowly, I surveyed the Wagon Wheel Acres dining room. It was filled with old people, really old people. The most depressing thing was realizing that I was one of them. I was only 62, and I didn't feel that old. Actually, I lied. That wasn't the most depressing part. I was sitting at a table for four with people I didn't know. Across the room was my wife, LaRue, sitting at another table with her lover. Everyone in the retirement complex knew about the situation, which made it even worse. I had been very careful when selecting Wagon Wheel Acres. It offered continuous care, which was good, and it didn't require a large buy-in. The monthly fees for both of us came to over $3,000, but that included peace of mind and no hassles. Of course, I had never envisioned that Jackson Millhouse would show up. I lost my appetite again as I watched my wife chatting away with Jackson. I had spent 40 years taking care of her, and he got to enjoy her in his old age. I mean that in all senses of the word. It had been 2 weeks since LaRue informed me that she had been intimate with Jackson and that she was going to continue. That afternoon, she moved all her clothing and personal items into his studio apartment. Our unit had an actual bedroom, but it didn't have Jackson. I didn't argue with her, I never had. What did that mean? Over the years, I found it easier to go along with whatever she wanted. It was better than fighting. I pushed my lunch aside and walked back to my room. It galled me to think that I was paying for her stay here while Jackson Millhouse reaped all the benefits. I had tried my best over the years to keep my wife happy sexually, but nothing seemed to work. It appeared that Jackson knew something that I didn't. Stuck in the mirror of my bathroom sink was a business card that one of the more active male bachelors had given me. I grabbed a cold beer and plopped down in my 10-year-old recliner, the only piece of furniture in the unit that wasn't new. I took 2 deep swigs of brew and stared at the golden card in front of me. Berkshire escorts, by the hour or by the day. That was ludicrous. What was a 62-year-old man going to do with an escort for a whole day? Hell, I seriously doubted I could get my money's worth out of an hour. I finished the Fosters and reached for the phone. I had no idea what I was going to say or what I was going to do. I think I just wanted to talk with someone. Berkshire Escorts. This is Darlene. Well, I got that far and then I froze. My silence was quickly noted. Berkshire Escorts. Hello. Are you there? Hello. Yes, I am here. I think it was quite obvious that I was a little nervous. My name is Darlene. I am guessing that you have a question you would like me to answer? How did you know that? Most people who call have questions. Then you're not psychic? Would you like to tell me your name? Carson. My name is Carson. Do you need to know that? Not really, but it makes it easier to talk to you. My friend Dippy gave me your card. Oh yes, Mr. Burke. Are you over at Wagon Wheel too? Yes. Is that a problem? Don't be silly. Why would it be? Dippy told me you provided him with a few companions and that he was quite happy. That's very nice of him to say. I'll have to give him a discount next week. I didn't know what to say, so there was a short pause in the conversation. Carson? Carson? Are you there? Yeah. I'm here. I just don't know what to say or ask you. Why don't I help you out a little? How long are you going to need company for? Well, I guess for about an hour or two. I just want somebody to have supper with, perhaps at a nice restaurant. I think an hour or two should be sufficient. That is all you want? I'm not interested in the sex part, if that's what you're getting at. All I want is a pleasant companion for a few hours. It was an uncomfortable situation for me since LaRue was the only woman I had ever been with. Carson, our escorts cost $300 an hour. That's a lot of money just to have a young lady eat supper with you. Yeah, I know. When you say young lady, how young are you talking about? Well, most of our escorts are under 30. That's not going to work out for me. I find that women under 50 are a little annoying. I was hoping for an older lady. Somebody mature, but classy. Do you have any suggestions? I'm afraid there aren't a lot of women in that age bracket working for escort services. I could look around for you, if you'd like. Does that mean it's going to cost me more than $300 an hour or less? I'm not sure at this point. I have your phone number on my caller ID. I'll check around and call you back in about an hour. Is that all right with you? That's okay. If you can you arrange it for tonight at about 7 o'clock? Where were you planning on taking the lady? I figured the Black Angus was the best place in town. Does that sound good enough? That should be fine, Carson. Give me an hour. I felt a little better when I hung up the phone. LaRue and Jackson would be dining on chicken patty parmesan tonight, but I would be having filet mignon. I spent the next hour going over my wardrobe like a high school girl. I decided on the navy blazer with a gray turtleneck and tan khaki pants. I didn't know for sure whether Darlene would be able to find someone, but it was worth the effort. I answered the phone on the third ring. I could have picked it up quicker, but I didn't want to seem too eager. This is Carson. Carson, Darlene here. I have good news. Your escort will be waiting for you in front of the Sheraton Hotel at 7. She'll be wearing a hunter green dress. Does that sound all right? That sounds great. I might be a little early, but I don't want to appear too anxious. How old is she, by the way? Now, Carson, you know better than to ask a woman her age. However, your date this evening is 58. I hope she's classy enough for you. Any other questions? Just one. How do I pay for this? Cash. Bring cash. The next few hours flew by. I have to admit, just thinking about the evening ahead was exhilarating. It was just dinner, but it promised to be romantic. I needed that. There were plenty of women available at Wagon Wheel Acres who would have made excellent dinner companions, but the thought of getting involved with any of them made me feel uncomfortable. Doing so would be akin to condoning what my wife was doing with Jackson. I didn't accept her relationship with him, but I couldn't figure out how to resolve the situation and still hold my head high. Nonetheless, nothing could be worse than my current circumstances. I might as well enjoy myself while I worked on finding a solution. I left home a bit early to take the Civic through a car wash. It wasn't necessary, but the evening was special. It would have been nice to have a more impressive car, but I had to make the best of what I had. I ended up parked at the Sheraton, watching the entrance. I didn't want to arrive before my escort appeared, but I also didn't want to keep her waiting. Damn it, I wished I had more experience in this sort of thing. I felt like a teenager. She was undoubtedly a classy lady. Her dress fit her perfectly and didn't look cheap. There was no way anyone could mistake her for a paid escort. She looked amazing for 58. For a moment, I wondered if I should have gone for something more, but talk is cheap. There was no way I could ever manage that. Dinner was it. That was all I could handle tonight. Carefully, I drove up to the entrance, parked, and walked around to open the door for her. Carson, I presume? Yes, madam. And what do I call you? Darlene. Just call me Darlene. She had a mischievous smile as she noticed my expression. She continued to smile after I walked around and got back into the driver's seat. I don't understand. I thought you were going to get me an escort. I was, but I called Dippy and talked to him for a while. I decided that I was the best choice for this evening. Do you do this often? She chuckled. No, not at all. In fact, it's the first time in 6 years I've gone out with a gentleman. Did I seem that desperate? No, silly. Not desperate. But Dippy said you could use a lift in spirits. Besides, I haven't had a nice evening out in a long time. Now, no more shop talk. Can I have lobster? Darlene opted for a small fillet instead of lobster. The evening unfolded just as I had hoped. After the meal, we sat and talked for hours until the waitstaff politely asked us to leave. She had never been married and had started in the escort business while in college. After a few years, she ran her own operation and seemed proud of her success. I started driving towards the Sheraton to drop her off, but she gave me a local address instead, a small brick house in an exclusive neighborhood with a for sale sign in the yard amid larger homes. I walked her to the front door, unsure of what to expect next. Would she invite me in? Should I kiss her? She solved the dilemma with one of her charming smiles. I hope your evening was everything you hoped for, Carson. I nodded as she held out her hand. That'll be $300, please. I wasn't expecting that, but I smiled and peeled off 3 bills from the stack I had brought with me, handing them to her. I don't understand. We were together for almost 4 hours? Yes, but that was my choice, not yours. I'm only charging you for the first hour. Is that okay? Of course. It was worth twice that. I watched as she folded the bills and tucked them into her bra, almost as if she did it for effect. Darlene, can we do this again? Are you sure? Her question held a seriousness that distracted me. Absolutely. I had a wonderful evening. I'd do this every night if I could afford it. She laughed again. Carson, why don't you come over here tomorrow night at 6? I'll cook something. I'd love to. I turned to leave but stopped. How much will that cost me? $300, silly. It's always $300. At that moment, she took my arm, leaned forward, and kissed me. It caught me off guard, making it more exciting. I felt a slight reaction in my groin. Maybe I should ask Dippy about those blue pills. I finally got my chance the next morning at breakfast. I was watching LaRue and Jackson across the dining room when Dippy pulled up a chair and more or less inserted himself into our group at the table. He had already eaten but still had a cup of coffee in hand. Carson, old buddy. How was your evening? Of course, the others at the table had no clue what he was referring to. Better than expected. I grinned. Way better than expected. I pushed my plate away, took my coffee, and we moved over to the coffee urn. Is that all you're going to tell me? Dippy, there's not much else to say. We had dinner and that was it. Nothing more. I didn't sleep with her. Well, what the hell did you pay her for then? I didn't have a satisfactory answer, so I remained silent. We settled into comfortable chairs in the lounge with fresh cups of coffee. Dippy, can you get me some pills? Sure thing. $20 a pop. Mildred can hook you up. Mildred? You mean the old lady in the wheelchair? Yeah. Her annuity ran out a few years back. I don't know where she gets them, but she always has a supply. She's managed to stay here by selling them. Isn't free enterprise great? So, Carson, who did she set you up with? I think I know all of them by now. From the way he asked, I knew he hadn't been with Darlene. I believed her when she said she hadn't had a customer in 6 years. In fact, I almost believed everything she had told me. Either she was sincere or an incredibly convincing liar. Then again, being able to lie convincingly was probably a useful skill in her line of work. I think her name was Greta. She had an accent, kind of Slavic or Russian. I didn't know why I didn't just tell him the truth. As we chatted, LaRue and Jackson walked by, lost in their own little world. My wife didn't glance over or acknowledge me. No one would guess we were married. I heard Dippy chuckle softly, earning him an elbow in the ribs. Dinner with Darlene was another memorable night. She wasn't a gourmet chef, but she cooked well. Dippy had called that afternoon, insisting on seeing Greta. Darlene quickly figured out what was happening and set him up with one of her newer girls, an aspiring actress eager to try out her Dr. Zhivago accent on poor Dippy. I think Darlene appreciated that I didn't reveal her name to him. The evening ended too soon, and I gave her another $300 as I left, earning me another kiss. The following night, we went for sushi. I knew what I liked to order, but she knew how to order it in Japanese. She was an incredible woman, and I cherished every moment with her. The only problem was I was married, and I didn't know how long I could keep affording that damn $300 fee. We always spent more than an hour together, yet the cost remained the same. I couldn't figure it out, and I wasn't about to ask. Things reached a critical point that weekend when my daughter, Sylvia, came to visit. She lived an hour away and typically visited only 3 or 4 times a year. This visit was different from previous ones. Instead of coming to my room, Sylvia went straight to the room where Jackson and her mother were staying. They spent over 2 hours together before wandering the grounds of the facility for another hour, chatting and laughing. Eventually, Sylvia checked her watch, said something to her mother, and headed back towards the main complex building. I didn't feel like talking to her at that moment, so I slipped out the back of the building. I watched her car leave 5 minutes later, heading back to her family. I felt a pang of sadness. Sylvia and I had always been close, or so I thought. Meanwhile, LaRue and Jackson remained by the koi pond, appearing like a couple deeply in love. That night, I was with Darlene. I was glad she had let me take the lead, and I was ecstatic that she had reciprocated my advances. I also gave $100 to Mildred, then received some unexpected news. Darlene had sold her house and her business to a group of younger colleagues who had pooled their savings to buy her out. Her college degree turned out to be an MBA, and she had a knack for investment that made her wealthy. Over the past year, she had been renovating a house she owned in Mérida, Mexico, and now it was finished. She was ready to move. Knowing her well enough by then, I knew she wouldn't ask me outright. I had to gather my courage and ask, "Darlene, is there any way I can come with you?" Her response wasn't verbal, but a smile and a hug. This woman had been with many men, and I was bewildered how I had become the one she chose to stay with. Flattered yet confused, I decided not to question her motives but to accept her decision. "Carson, I think we can make this work, if you're willing." "I suppose I'll need to get a divorce then?" "No way. You'll lose half of everything. Just let me handle it all for you. We're leaving in 10 days. Are you sure about this?" "Oh yes, I'm sure. By the way, where exactly is Mérida?" The next week was a whirlwind. Thankfully, my passport was up to date. Darlene arranged for me to sell my unit back to Wagon Wheel Acres, getting 80% of the original purchase price. She opened a bank account for me at Citibank, which operates as Banamex in Mérida, ensuring I had enough money from the sale of my apartment to live comfortably without rent or utilities. My retirement package from Gilbert Industries included an annuity account designed to safeguard my assets. Fortunately, Darlene knew buyers interested in purchasing the annuity outright for a lump sum. I recalled those TV ads where people shouted, "It's my money, and I want it now," and wondered if they were genuine. Ultimately, I received 82% of the account's value, foregoing future monthly payments for a substantial cash sum. Nearly $800,000 was deposited into my Citibank account. Selling the Honda was effortless, pocketing the cash for incidental expenses. Meanwhile, Darlene had set up an account for me at Banamex in Mérida. Though I could transfer funds from Citibank, I needed Banamex for direct deposit of my Social Security check, a bureaucratic ordeal at the local Social Security office. In the days leading up to our departure, I stayed exclusively at Darlene's place. According to Dippy, LaRue hadn't noticed my absence. Unsurprising. I gifted Dippy my HD TV and ceased payments to Wagon Wheel Acres, cutting off LaRue's financial lifeline. From now on, Jackson Millhouse would foot the bill. Describing Mérida's houses is challenging. They resemble villages in Spain or Italy, painted in pastels, tightly clustered yet surprisingly opulent inside. Darlene covered all expenses, making me feel like a gigolo. I tried to reciprocate with small gifts until she firmly declined. Life felt perfect until Sylvia showed up 6 months later. Darlene warmly welcomed my daughter into our home before excusing herself for the market. Left alone with Sylvia, I faced her blunt question. "Dad, what the hell are you doing here? You need to come home." I was at a loss for words. I gestured for her to sit. "Could you be more specific?" I asked. Sylvia appeared frustrated even before we began. "You left without telling anyone and took everything with you." "Yeah. So what?" I replied. "What about Mom? What about her?" I asked her to come with me, but she chose to stay with Jackson. I lied. Sylvia couldn't verify my statement. But you took everything, money, retirement account. What was Mom supposed to do? She seemed fine when I left. Besides, she wanted nothing to do with me. Why are you here now? You can't just abandon her. She's your wife. The last time you came to Wagon Wheel Acres, before I left, you spent 3 hours with Jackson and your mother and no time at all with me. Why? I tried to find you, but you were not in your room. You tried to find me after 3 hours. What was I? An afterthought? Some kind of obligation? Don't be so dramatic. Mother was happy with Jackson. She wanted me to get to know him. Fine. Let him take care of her. You know, of course, that she was sleeping in his room with him? Yes. She said that you no longer wanted to share a bed with her. Did you actually believe that? What do you want, Sylvia? Why did you go to all the trouble to find me and then come down here? I am not going back. I will not allow her to shove her infidelity in my face. It was humiliating and degrading, and if you can't see that, you need help. Barry and I can no longer afford to pay her fees at Wagon Wheel Acres. Her Social Security doesn't cover half of the expenses, and they won't allow her to stay without full payment. What about good old Jackson? I thought that he was going to be helping out. Jackson Millhouse was moved into the Alzheimer wing 3 months ago. The rules do not allow Mother to stay in the room with him, and we can't afford to keep her in a unit by herself. Hold it. Hold it. Are you telling me that you want me to give her money so that she can continue to stay at Wagon Wheel Acres and be close to her lover? Dad. She is comfortable there. She wants to stay there because it is safe and familiar. Bullshit. She wants to stay there so that she can be close to him, even though he probably no longer knows who the hell she is. You are crazy if you think that I am going to let her use me for something like this. You are not being fair. Why don't you let her live with you? She can babysit for you and other stuff. Your house is big enough. We offered. She turned us down. She wants to stay at Wagon Wheel Acres. I slowly got out of my chair and walked to the front hallway. As I took my hat from the peg by the door, I looked at my daughter. She traveled over 1,000 miles for nothing. Her mother had hung the horns on me, and now my daughter was trying to make me feel guilty for not accepting the humiliation. I am going down to the market. Close the door on your way out. I knew exactly where I could find Darlene. I never did find out what had motivated LaRue to act as she did. I no longer care. I am happy in my Adobe Hacienda. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel not to miss new videos.